All right, hello everybody, happy Thursday. If you're watching this video, that means you have already finished the Desmos activity. If you have not finished the Desmos activity, please go back to the Google Classroom, look at the instructions, and go to student.desmos.com, enter the correct code for your class, period, and complete that probability activity. It's just to get you back in the swing of things, remind you all about basic probability. Once you've done that, then you should be here thinking about how we're going to compute some probabilities. So again, go back and do that if you haven't done it yet. Otherwise, here we go. If we're thinking about how to compute probabilities, it's always good to have a context that has multiple outcomes, multiple topics. So here we're looking at a survey of freshman and sophomore students about what their favorite social medium was. And, oh, hang on, there's a typo here. We're not using Facebook. I switched that for Snapchat. That's important. Make that change there, please. In this particular scenario, this collection of students was interviewed, and I've gone ahead and given you some details, but what I haven't done is I haven't filled in totals. Totals are important. I'm going to fill in a couple of the totals, and then you can fill in the rest. So if you're thinking about how many users of each, right, and then make sure you come up with this one. This is going to give you the total number of participants. And then double check, because the sum of the freshmen and the sophomores should give you the total number of participants. And then the total sum of the Twitter users, the Snapchat users, and the Instagram users should also give you the total number of participants. So just double check your numbers to make sure you got the correct totals. You'll need those to finish the activity here. So in thinking about basic probability, this is probability at its most basic. We're always thinking about what is the likelihood of an outcome, and then we're quantifying that with a number. We're thinking about that number in terms of a fraction or a percent, and we're always thinking about what is the number of desired. Like, desired refers to here, how many do we want, how many are we interested in, how many are we investigating, and we're dividing that by the total number possible. Okay, so the number desired, the number we're interested in, divided by the total number possible. Now, the number desired should always be equal to or less than the total possible. So our probability will never exceed 1. Probability will never exceed 1. It'll also never be less than 0. We'll talk more about probability 1 and probability 0 in class tomorrow. So thinking about the questions I'm going to ask you to ponder here, just to introduce this unit today. What is the probability that a randomly selected survey participant prefers Twitter? So in this case, a survey participant, we're thinking about a sample space. That's a fancy word for total possible. That is the total number of survey participants, right? So the total number of people in the survey. Okay, and then the probability that one of them prefers Twitter, well, this will come from the total number of Twitter users. And as you think about what those numbers are, you'll come up with a fraction, and then that you can write as a decimal, and then eventually we'll want to write that number as a percentage. So go ahead and write it as a fraction today. If you want to get all fancy and start writing it as a percentage today, that's fine too. But we'll start with a fraction. You don't need to reduce the fraction. In fact, I find it more helpful if you don't reduce the fraction. That lets us see the number desired and the number possible in the fraction. Okay, so in this first one, you're going to look for the total number of Twitter users and divide that by the total number of survey participants. And that is a different kind of a context than what you'll see here in question C. Okay, in this case, we want to know what is the probability that a randomly selected freshman prefers Instagram. And be careful with the language here, because we're no longer talking about all the survey participants. We're just talking about the total number of freshmen. The total number of freshmen that participated. And then we're no longer thinking about the total number that said Instagram because we've narrowed it down to freshmen. So the desired amount is now just the number of freshmen that said they were Instagram users. So be careful when you're thinking about the survey participants as a whole, the total, that will be this number here. And when you're narrowing it down to a particular group, so in this case, we're narrowing it down to freshmen, and we're saying what is the probability that a freshman preferred Instagram? Right, and so the last thing you'll consider here is this word or. When we talked earlier this week about the fundamental counting principle, right, we talked about and means multiplication. Multiplication. And we talked about how or is going to refer to addition, right? So in this case, we're looking at what is the probability that somebody preferred Twitter or Snapchat. That widens the number of desireds to include the number of Twitter added to the number of Snapchat users. And then again, because we're talking about all the participants, we'll divide that by the total number that participated in the survey. So that should be enough of a preview for you to finish answering these questions here. And again, leave your final answer as a fraction. You can write what number that is divided by what number that is. In order to do that, you're going to have to go back and figure out some totals, fill in those blanks. And if you have trouble with this, if you're confused about any one of these, make sure you bring these to me in AM support and we can go through them together. Please don't forget that you have a quiz tomorrow. That's Friday. And this probability stuff will not appear on the quiz, but we will continue with it tomorrow after the quiz. For tomorrow's quiz, you should know how to compute combinations and permutations, using both a formula and a not formula if you prefer to use it without the formula, but do be able to recognize how we do both. And remember to ask yourself about whether or not order matters. Please don't forget to turn in your work for class today and make sure that you've completed and submitted the Desmos activity. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, Friday. Have a wonderful rest of your day.